This is the true story of the Golden Age of Piracy, the story of real men who inspired legends, the story of John Ward, the real inspiration behind Jack Sparrow, and the story of an era when freedom meant sailing beyond the reach of any nation's power. We begin our journey now, sailing into the past, into waters where adventure and danger sailed side by side. To understand the pirates, we must first understand the world they lived in. The year is 1690. The place is the Caribbean Sea, a vast expanse of blue water dotted with hundreds of islands, some large, some small, some inhabited, many empty. The Caribbean in the late 1600s was a place of opportunity and chaos. The Spanish had claimed much of it. The English wanted it. The French wanted it. The Dutch wanted it. Every European power was fighting over these warm waters and tropical islands. Why? Because of sugar and tobacco and gold and silver. The Caribbean islands could grow sugarcane in quantities that Europe had never seen. Sugar was more valuable than gold at the time. It was called white gold. Plantations covered entire islands. Ships carried the sugar back to Europe, where it was sold for enormous profits. But to protect these valuable cargoes, the ships needed to be armed. They needed to be fast. They needed crews who could fight. And so the Caribbean became filled with ships. Merchant ships carrying cargo, naval ships protecting the merchants, privateers, which were legal pirates hired by governments to attack enemy shipping. It was a world of violence and opportunity, a world where a clever man with courage could become rich or die trying. Into this world came men from all walks of life, sailors who had deserted from naval ships, soldiers who had finished their service and found themselves stranded in the Caribbean with no way home, indentured servants who had escaped from the plantations, slaves who had run away and found refuge among the pirates. These men formed crews, they elected captains, they created their own codes of conduct. They became pirates. The Golden Age of Piracy lasted from approximately 1690 to 1725. 35 years during which the Caribbean was terrorized and fascinated by men who sailed under black flags bearing skulls and crossbones. Some of these men became legends. Their names echo through history even today. Blackbeard, Captain Kidd, Bartholomew Roberts, Bonny, Mary Read, Calico Jack Rackham. But before all of them was John Ward, the man who would inspire the character of Jack Sparrow, the man who showed that a common sailor could become a legend.
John Ward was born in England sometime around 1553. He was not born into wealth or privilege. He was the son of a fisherman. He grew up in the small fishing town of Faversham in Kent. As a boy, Ward learned to sail. He learned to read the weather. He learned to navigate by the stars. He learned all the skills that a man needed to survive at sea. When he was old enough, he joined the English Navy. This was during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. England was at war with Spain. English ships were raiding Spanish colonies and Spanish treasure fleets. Ward served on several naval vessels. He participated in battles. He learned the art of naval combat. He learned how ships could be captured, how cargoes could be seized, how wealth could be taken from those who were not strong enough to defend it. But Ward was not content with naval service. The pay was poor. The conditions were harsh. Men were beaten for small infractions. Food was terrible. Disease was rampant. Ward began to dream of a different life, a life where he would not answer to officers who cared nothing for him, a life where he could keep the profits of his own labor, rather than handing them over to wealthy merchants and nobles. He began to dream of becoming a pirate. In 1594, when Ward was in his early 40s, he made his decision. He deserted from the English Navy. He gathered a small group of like-minded sailors. Together, they stole a small ship and sailed away from England. They were now outlaws, pirates, men who would be hanged if they were captured. But they were also free. Ward and his crew sailed to the Mediterranean. This was unusual. Most pirates of the time operated in the Caribbean, but Ward had a different plan. He knew that the Mediterranean was filled with rich merchant ships traveling between Europe and the Ottoman Empire. Ships carrying silk and spices and gold. He established a base on the coast of North Africa, in a place called Tunis. The local Ottoman rulers tolerated the pirates because the pirates attacked Christian ships, which the Ottomans considered enemies. Ward began his career as a pirate in earnest. He was now in his mid-40s, an age when most men of that era were preparing for old age, but Ward was just beginning the adventure that would make him famous.
John Ward proved to be exceptionally good at piracy. He was intelligent, he was bold, he understood naval tactics, and he had a natural talent for leadership. His crew respected him, not because he was cruel or feared, but because he was fair. He shared plunder equally among his men. He listened to their opinions. He did not demand blind obedience. Instead, he earned loyalty through competence and fairness. Under Ward's leadership, his crew began capturing ships with remarkable regularity. They would patrol the major shipping lanes in the Mediterranean. When they spotted a likely target, they would give chase. Ward preferred to capture ships without fighting, if possible. He would raise a black flag, which was a signal that he was a pirate. He would fire a warning shot across the bow of the target ship, and he would offer the crew a choice. Surrender peacefully, and you will not be harmed. Your ship and cargo will be taken, but your lives will be spared. Or resist and face the consequences. Most ships surrendered. The sailors aboard merchant vessels were not eager to die protecting cargo that did not belong to them. They were paid poorly. They had no loyalty to the wealthy merchants who owned the ships. When faced with a choice between dying for someone else's profits or living to sail another day, most chose life. Ward's reputation grew. Stories spread throughout the Mediterranean of the English pirate who commanded a fast ship and a loyal crew. Merchants began to fear seeing his sails on the horizon. Between 1594 and 1612, Ward captured dozens of ships. Some were small coastal traders, some were larger merchant vessels, and some were enormous ships carrying cargoes worth tens of thousands of pounds. One of Ward's most famous captures was a Venetian merchant ship called the Riniera e Soderina. This was a massive vessel, one of the largest merchant ships in the Mediterranean at the time. It was carrying an enormous cargo of silk, spices, gold, and other valuable goods. Ward attacked the ship off the coast of Cyprus. The Venetian crew tried to resist, but Ward's men were too skilled. After a brief battle, the Venetian ship surrendered. The value of the cargo was estimated at over 100,000 pounds. In modern terms, this would be worth tens of millions of dollars. It was one of the richest prizes ever captured by a pirate. Ward and his crew divided the plunder. Every man received a share. Even the ordinary sailors became wealthy from this single capture. But Ward did not keep all his wealth. He sent money back to England to support his family. He used money to bribe officials in Tunis to allow him to continue operating from their port. He invested in ships and supplies for future voyages. He was not just a pirate. He was a businessman,
a strategist, a man who understood that success required planning and intelligence, not just courage and luck. What was life like for a pirate in the Golden Age? What did Ward and his men do when they were not attacking ships? How did they live? What were their daily routines? The reality of pirate life was very different from the romantic image that movies and books have created. Life aboard a pirate ship was hard. The work was constant and physically demanding. Sails had to be adjusted. Ropes had to be mended. The deck had to be cleaned. The hull had to be maintained. The men worked in shifts, 4 hours on watch, then 4 hours of rest, around the clock, day after day, week after week. The food was poor. Hard biscuits that were often infested with weevils, salted meat that was tough and tasteless, dried peas and beans. Occasionally, when they stopped at an island, they could get fresh fruit, fresh meat, fresh water. But most of the time, the food was barely edible. Water was a constant problem. Fresh water would go bad after a few weeks in the wooden barrels. It would develop a foul taste and smell. The men would often drink it mixed with rum or wine to mask the taste. Rum became the favorite drink of pirates. It was relatively cheap. It was strong. It did not go bad as quickly as water, and it helped the men forget the hardships of their lives. Disease was rampant. Scurvy, caused by lack of vitamin C, would cause men's teeth to fall out and old wounds to reopen. Dysentery, caused by contaminated food and water, would kill men slowly and painfully. Malaria and yellow fever, carried by mosquitoes, would strike men down in their prime. Many pirates did not die in battle. They died from disease or from accidents. A man could fall from the rigging and break his neck. He could be washed overboard in a storm. He could be struck by a swinging boom and killed instantly. Life expectancy for a pirate was short. Most pirates did not live past their 30s. Some died younger. But despite these hardships, many men chose the pirate's life. Why? Because the alternatives were often worse. Life as a sailor on a merchant ship or naval vessel was also hard. The food was just as bad, the work was just as demanding, but the pay was terrible and the treatment was often brutal. Captains on legal ships had almost absolute power. They could beat sailors for minor infractions. They could withhold pay. They could abandon injured sailors in foreign ports. On a pirate ship, things were different. The captain was elected by the crew. He could be removed if he performed poorly, and every man had a vote in major decisions. The plunder was divided fairly according to a written code. This was democracy. This was equality. This was, in a strange way, freedom. For men who had lived their entire lives under the thumb of kings and nobles and wealthy merchants, the pirate's life offered something they had never experienced before: the chance to be their own masters, to live by their own rules, to share in the profits of their labor. It was dangerous, it was brutal, but it was theirs.
Contrary to popular belief, pirates did not live in chaos. They had rules, detailed rules, written codes that every man on the ship had to agree to before joining the crew. These codes varied from ship to ship, but they had common elements. First, the division of plunder. Every man would receive a share based on his role. The captain would receive 1.5 shares or 2 shares. Officers like the quartermaster and the gunner would receive 1.25 shares. Ordinary sailors would receive 1 share each. Men who were injured in battle would receive compensation from the common fund. Second, discipline. Fighting among the crew was forbidden. Disputes had to be settled peacefully or put off until the ship reached land, where the men could duel if they insisted. Stealing from fellow crew members was punishable by marooning, which meant being abandoned on a deserted island with only a pistol, some ammunition, and a bottle of water. Third, duties. Every man had to keep his weapons clean and ready. Every man had to be ready to fight when called upon. Cowardice in battle was punishable by death or marooning. Fourth, democracy. Major decisions, such as where to sail and what ships to attack, were decided by vote. Every man had one vote. The captain could be removed by majority vote if the crew was dissatisfied with his leadership. These codes were remarkably progressive for their time. In an age when most men lived under monarchies and rigid class systems, pirate ships operated as democracies. In an age when inequality was assumed to be natural and inevitable, pirate crews divided wealth equally. Historians have noted that pirate crews were among the most egalitarian societies of their era. Men of different nationalities, races, and backgrounds worked together as equals. Former slaves served alongside former sailors. Men who could not have sat at the same table in polite society shared meals and plunder as brothers. This was one of the reasons why piracy attracted so many followers. It offered not just the chance for wealth, but the chance for dignity and respect. John Ward's crew followed a code similar to those used by other pirate captains. Ward insisted on fair treatment of prisoners. He did not allow his men to torture or rape captives. Ships that surrendered were treated with relative mercy. Crews were sometimes even given a small boat so they could row to shore safely. This was not pure altruism. Ward understood that his reputation mattered. If word spread that surrendering to Ward meant certain death, then ships would fight to the last man. But if surrendering meant being treated fairly, then ships would give up without a fight, which meant less danger for Ward and his crew. Ward was a pragmatist. He understood that pirates could not survive without some level of public goodwill, or at least the absence of universal hatred. Ward operated primarily in the Mediterranean, but other pirates of the Golden Age focused on the Caribbean. Let us shift our attention now to that warm blue-green sea where much of pirate history unfolded. The Caribbean in the early 1700s was perfect for piracy. Hundreds of islands provided hiding places. The waters were filled with merchant ships carrying valuable cargoes. The colonial governments were weak and corrupt. Naval patrols were infrequent and often ineffective. Pirates established bases on several islands. Port Royal in Jamaica was the most famous. Before it was destroyed by an earthquake in 1692, Port Royal was known as the wickedest city in the world. It was a haven for pirates, smugglers, and outlaws of every type. After Port Royal's destruction, pirates moved to other bases. Nassau, in the Bahamas, became the new pirate capital. At its peak, Nassau was home to over 1,000 pirates. They elected their own governors. They created their own laws. For a brief time, Nassau was an independent pirate republic. The pirates of Nassau included some of the most famous names in pirate history: Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard; Charles Vane; Jack Rackham, called Calico Jack; Anne Bonny and Mary Read, two women who disguised themselves as men to sail with pirate crews. These pirates hunted Spanish treasure ships, carrying gold and silver from the New World back to Spain. They hunted English merchant ships carrying sugar and tobacco. They hunted any ship that looked like it might have something worth taking. The tactics were similar to those used by John Ward in the Mediterranean. Spot a likely target, give chase, raise the black flag, fire a warning shot, offer surrender or death. Most ships surrendered. The ones that did not often regretted it. Blackbeard was particularly effective at psychological warfare. He was a huge man with a long black beard that he would sometimes light on fire using slow-burning fuses tucked into his hair. This created a terrifying appearance, as if his head was wreathed in smoke and flame. He cultivated this fearsome reputation because it made ships more likely to surrender without a fight. The pirates also developed distinctive flags. The skull and crossbones, known as the Jolly Roger, became the universal symbol of piracy. But individual pirates had their own variations. Blackbeard's flag featured a skeleton holding an hourglass and a spear. Calico Jack's flag showed a skull with two crossed swords beneath it. Bartholomew Roberts, the most successful pirate of the era, had multiple flags depicting skeletons, hourglasses, and other symbols of death. These flags served a practical purpose. They identified the pirates to their targets, they created fear and encouraged surrender, and they sent a clear message: death awaits those who resist.
Among the most fascinating figures of the Golden Age of Piracy were two women, Bonny and Mary Read. Their stories challenge our assumptions about gender roles in the 18th century and show that the pirate's life could attract anyone seeking freedom from society's constraints. Bonny was born in Ireland around 1697. She was the illegitimate daughter of a lawyer and his maid. To avoid scandal, her father dressed her as a boy and claimed she was a relative's child he was raising. This early experience of living as a male may have influenced her later choices. Anne's family moved to South Carolina and the Americas when she was young. She grew up as a strong-willed, independent young woman. According to stories, she once stabbed a servant girl with a table knife during an argument, showing her fierce temperament from an early age. Against her father's wishes, Anne married a small-time pirate named James Bonny. Her father disowned her. The marriage was unhappy. Anne found herself in Nassau, the pirate haven, where she met Calico Jack Rackham. Jack Rackham was a pirate captain with his own ship. He and Anne fell in love. Anne left her husband and joined Rackham's crew, disguising herself as a man. She proved to be as fierce and capable as any male pirate. Mary Read's story was similar but even more remarkable. She was born in England around 1685. Her mother dressed her as a boy from childhood to pass her off as her deceased brother, which allowed the mother to continue receiving financial support from the boy's grandmother. Mary grew up living as a male. She served in the British military, fighting in Flanders. She fell in love with a fellow soldier, revealed her true identity to him, and they married. But her husband died soon after, and Mary found herself alone again. She resumed her male disguise and took a ship to the Caribbean. The ship was captured by pirates. Mary joined the pirate crew, still presenting as male. She eventually joined Calico Jack Rackham's crew, where she met Bonny. According to legend, Bonny was attracted to the handsome young sailor Mark Read and revealed her own secret, that she was a woman. Mark Read then revealed that he was actually Mary Read, also a woman. The two became close friends and fierce allies.
Both women fought alongside the men. Contemporary accounts describe them as fearless fighters who were as skilled with pistol and cutlass as any man aboard. During battles, they wore men's clothing. During normal sailing, they sometimes wore women's clothing, and their true gender was known to the crew. In 1720, Calico Jack's ship was captured by a British naval vessel. Most of the crew was drunk below decks. Only Bonny and Mary Read, along with one male pirate, were sober enough to fight. The two women fought ferociously, but they were eventually overwhelmed and captured. The entire crew was tried for piracy. The men, including Calico Jack Rackham, were found guilty and hanged. But Bonny and Mary Read both pleaded their bellies, claiming to be pregnant. In that era, pregnant women could not be executed until after giving birth. Mary Read died in prison, possibly from fever or complications from pregnancy. Bonny disappeared from historical records. Some accounts say her wealthy father ransomed her and she returned to South Carolina. Others say she was hanged after giving birth. Her ultimate fate remains a mystery.
The stories of Anne Bonny and Mary Read show that the appeal of piracy crossed all boundaries. These women found on pirate ships a freedom and equality they could never have found in polite society. They could fight, drink, vote, and share in plunder just as men did. They proved that courage and skill mattered more than gender. If we judge success by the number of ships captured and the wealth accumulated, the most successful pirate of the Golden Age was not Blackbeard or Calico Jack, or even John Ward. It was a Welsh pirate named Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart.
Roberts was born in 1682 in Wales. Unlike many pirates who were sailors from youth, Roberts came to piracy relatively late in life. He was working as a navigator on a slave ship when the ship was captured by pirates in 1719. Roberts was 37 years old. He was pressed into service with the pirate crew, but he quickly showed his abilities. When the pirate captain was killed in battle, the crew elected Roberts as the new captain. Roberts proved to be extraordinarily successful. He was intelligent, bold, and ruthless when necessary. He understood naval tactics better than most naval officers, and he had a remarkable ability to motivate his crew. Over the next 3 years, from 1719 to 1722, Roberts captured over 400 ships. 400. This is more than any other pirate in history. He operated primarily off the coast of West Africa and in the Caribbean. His ships ranged from small sloops to large frigates captured from naval forces. He commanded crews numbering in the hundreds. Roberts was unusual among pirates in several ways. He did not drink alcohol, preferring tea instead. This was remarkable in an era when rum was the universal drink of sailors. He was also deeply religious, holding Sunday services on his ship and forbidding work on the Sabbath. But he was also fearless and violent when challenged. He once sailed into the harbor of a major port city and captured 42 ships in a single raid. When Portuguese authorities hanged some of his men, Roberts sailed to a Portuguese colony and destroyed every ship in the harbor as revenge. Roberts created one of the most elaborate pirate flags of the era. It showed Roberts himself standing on 2 skulls labeled ABH and AMH, meaning a Barbadian's head and a Martinican's head. This was his way of promising death to anyone from Barbados or Martinique, where authorities had particularly offended him.
He also created an elaborate pirate code for his crew. This code included 11 articles covering everything from division of plunder to treatment of prisoners to behavior aboard ship. The code forbade gambling, fighting, and bringing women aboard. It required every man to keep his weapons ready and to vote on major decisions. Roberts's success made him the most wanted pirate in the Atlantic. The British Navy sent multiple warships to hunt him. For years, he evaded them all. But in February 1722, a British naval vessel called HMS Swallow found Roberts' ship off the coast of West Africa. Roberts had just captured a Dutch ship and was celebrating. He was not expecting an attack. When the Swallow attacked, Roberts rushed on deck. He was wearing his finest clothes, a rich crimson coat and hat, with a diamond cross hanging from a gold chain around his neck. He commanded his crew to prepare for battle. A burst of grape shot from the Swallow struck Roberts in the throat, killing him instantly. His crew, following his previous orders, wrapped his body in sailcloth and threw it overboard before the ship could be captured. Roberts had always said he would rather be buried at sea than be captured and hanged by authorities. With Roberts dead, his crew fought on for a while, but eventually surrendered. The survivors were tried for piracy. 52 men were hanged. Others were sent to labor as slaves in colonial plantations. The death of Bartholomew Roberts marked the beginning of the end of the Golden Age of Piracy.
The most successful pirate in history was gone. The naval forces were becoming better organized. The colonial governments were cracking down on pirate havens. The era of the pirates was coming to a close. By the mid-1720s, the Golden Age of Piracy was ending. There were several reasons for this decline.
First, the naval forces were becoming more effective. Britain, Spain, France, and other European powers were investing in larger navies specifically tasked with hunting pirates. Ships were faster. Crews were better trained. The pirates no longer had a significant tactical advantage. Second, the pirate havens were being eliminated. Nassau, the pirate republic in the Bahamas, was recaptured by the British in 1718. A new governor, Woodes Rogers, arrived with a pardon for any pirate who surrendered and a promise of hanging for any pirate who resisted. Many pirates accepted the pardon. Those who did not were hunted down. Third, the economic conditions that had created piracy were changing. The wars between European powers and the Caribbean were ending. The need for privateers was diminishing. Legitimate trade was becoming more profitable and less risky than piracy. Fourth, the punishments for piracy were becoming more severe and more consistently enforced. Captured pirates were no longer ransomed or pardoned. They were hanged. Their bodies were displayed in iron cages as warnings to others. The message was clear: piracy would not be tolerated. The last major pirates were captured or killed in the early 1720s. Blackbeard was killed in battle in 1718. Calico Jack Rackham was captured and hanged in 1720. Bartholomew Roberts was killed in 1722. Charles Vane was captured and hanged in 1721. By 1725, organized piracy in the Caribbean had effectively ended. There were still occasional pirate attacks. There were still individual pirates operating in remote waters, but the era when pirates could establish their own bases and challenge the navies of major powers was over. What happened to the pirates who survived? Some accepted pardons and retired. Some became legitimate sailors or merchants. Some moved to remote areas where they lived out their lives in obscurity. A few became pirate hunters, using their knowledge of pirate tactics to hunt down their former colleagues. The most famous of these was Captain Woodes Rogers, who had himself been a privateer before becoming the governor who ended the pirate republic of Nassau.
John Ward, the pirate who inspired Jack Sparrow, lived longer than most. He operated in the Mediterranean until around 1622. By then, he was in his 60s, ancient by the standards of the era. Ward eventually retired to Tunis. He had converted to Islam years earlier, possibly as a condition of being allowed to base his operations there. He took the name Yusuf Reis. He built a palace. He lived as a wealthy man, though he was always an outsider, never fully accepted by either the Ottoman society or the European expatriates. Ward died around 1622, probably of plague. He was never captured. He never faced justice for his piracy. He died wealthy and free, which was the dream of every pirate, but the reality for very few. The Golden Age of Piracy lasted only about 35 years, but its impact on history and culture has lasted for centuries. The pirates of that era have become legendary figures. Their names are known around the world. Books, movies, and television shows continue to tell and retell their stories. But what is the true legacy of the pirates? What did they accomplish beyond accumulating wealth and terrorizing merchant ships? First, they challenged the power structures of their era. In a time when kings and nobles held absolute power, when common people had no voice in how they were governed, pirates created democratic societies aboard their ships. Every man had a vote. Leaders were elected. Plunder was divided fairly. This was revolutionary. These were ideas that would later influence democratic movements around the world. The American Revolution, the French Revolution. These great democratic upheavals drew on many sources, and pirate democracy was one small part of that tradition. Second, pirates demonstrated that people from different backgrounds could work together. Pirate crews included men of different nationalities, races, and religions. Former slaves sailed alongside former aristocrats. Catholics worked with Protestants. English sailors worked with French and Spanish sailors. In an era of intense national and religious conflict, pirate ships were remarkably inclusive. This was not because pirates were particularly enlightened or progressive. It was because they were practical. A skilled sailor was valuable regardless of his background. And when you are facing a heavily armed merchant ship, you care more about whether your crewmate is brave and competent than about where he was born or what god he worships. Third, pirates left a cultural legacy that continues to fascinate us. The image of the pirate, independent, adventurous, living by his own rules, has become a powerful symbol in popular culture. We may not admire everything pirates did, but we admire their freedom, their courage, their refusal to accept the limitations that society tried to impose on them. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies, with Johnny Depp's character, Jack Sparrow, draw on this legacy. Jack Sparrow is clever, unpredictable, seemingly chaotic, but actually quite strategic. He values freedom above wealth. He follows his own code. He is loyal to his friends, but trusts no authority. This character is based in part on John Ward and other real pirates of the Golden Age. The swagger, the cunning, the ability to talk his way out of difficult situations. These are all characteristics that contemporary accounts attributed to successful pirates like Ward. Of course, the reality was far less romantic than the movies suggest. Real pirates lived hard lives. They suffered from disease and hunger. Many died young and violently. There was nothing glamorous about dying from scurvy or dysentery in the hold of a ship. But there was something admirable about men who chose freedom over security, who refused to accept their assigned place in society, who believed that they had the right to determine their own fate. This is why pirate stories continue to resonate, not because we want to steal and kill, but because we want to believe that we can choose our own path, that we are not bound by the circumstances of birth or by the expectations of others, that we can be the captains of our own souls. What did pirates believe? Did they have a philosophy, a worldview that justified their actions? Most pirates were not philosophers. They were practical men focused on survival and profit. But in their actions and their words, recorded in trials and contemporary accounts, we can discern a certain way of thinking about the world. Pirates believed in equality. Not perfect equality. Captains still received larger shares of plunder, but compared to the rigid hierarchies of legitimate society, pirate crews were remarkably egalitarian. Every man's voice counted. Every man shared in the profits.
Pirates believed in freedom. Not abstract political freedom, but the concrete freedom to make their own choices. Where to sail, what to attack, how to divide the spoils. These decisions were made collectively, not imposed from above. Pirates believed in loyalty, not loyalty to kings or countries, but loyalty to each other. Shipmates were brothers. They relied on each other for survival. Betraying a crewmate was one of the worst crimes a pirate could commit.
Pirates believed in merit. A man's worth was determined by his skills and his courage, not by his birth or his connections. A former slave could become a pirate captain if he proved himself capable. This was virtually impossible in legitimate society, where your station in life was determined largely by the circumstances of your birth. Pirates also believed in enjoying life while you could. They knew their lives would likely be short, so they embraced pleasure when it was available. Drinking, gambling, women, music. When pirates captured a valuable prize, they often celebrated extravagantly, spending money as quickly as they earned it. This might seem irresponsible, but it reflected a clear-eyed understanding of their situation. What good was saving money if you would likely be dead within a year or two? Better to enjoy life now than to hoard wealth you might never get to use. There was also a certain defiance in the pirates' philosophy, a rejection of the rules that legitimate society tried to impose. Pirates saw themselves as outside the social contract. They had not consented to be governed by kings or merchants, so they felt no obligation to follow laws they had not agreed to. One famous pirate, when asked why he stole from merchants, replied, "You call me a pirate because I sail in a small ship, but when wealthy men do the same in large ships, you call them admirals and give them titles. The only difference between us is the size of our ships." This was a radical critique of society. It suggested that the laws were made by the wealthy to protect their interests, not to serve justice. That the real thieves were the merchants and nobles who exploited common people, while pirates were simply taking by force what the wealthy had taken through legal but unjust means. Not all pirates would have articulated this philosophy so clearly, but many felt it instinctively. They were not evil men. They were men who had decided that the system was rigged against them, and so they would opt out of the system entirely. Let us return now to the Caribbean, to the year 1718. Let us witness the last battle of the most famous pirate of all, Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard. Blackbeard had terrorized the Atlantic coast of North America and the Caribbean for nearly 2 years. His flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was a formidable vessel, captured from the French and outfitted with 40 guns. Blackbeard was not the most successful pirate in terms of plunder captured, but he was the most famous because of his terrifying appearance and his theatrical personality. His reputation alone was enough to make ships surrender without a fight. But by 1718, the authorities had had enough. The governor of Virginia, Alexander Spotswood, hired Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the British Navy to hunt down Blackbeard and end his career.
Maynard tracked Blackbeard to Ocracoke Inlet in North Carolina. Blackbeard was anchored there with his ship and a small crew. He was not expecting an attack. He may have been planning to retire with his accumulated wealth. On November 22, 1718, Maynard attacked at dawn. He commanded 2 small ships with a total of about 60 men. When Blackbeard saw the ships approaching, he immediately understood what was happening. This was not a merchant ship to be captured. This was a military force sent specifically to kill him. Blackbeard could have tried to escape. His ship was faster than Maynard's vessels, but Blackbeard chose to fight. Perhaps he was tired of running. Perhaps he believed he could win.
Perhaps he simply refused to die as a fugitive. The battle began with cannon fire. Both sides exchanged volleys, but the shallow waters of the inlet made maneuvering difficult. The ships came closer together. Blackbeard's crew fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered. As Maynard's men boarded Blackbeard's ship, hand-to-hand combat erupted across the deck. Blackbeard himself fought like a demon. He was a huge man, powerful and skilled with weapons. He carried multiple pistols and a cutlass. He fought his way toward Lieutenant Maynard. The two men faced each other on the blood-soaked deck. They exchanged pistol shots. Blackbeard's shot missed. Maynard's shot hit Blackbeard, but did not stop him. They drew their cutlasses and fought. Blackbeard's blade shattered Maynard's sword. For a moment, it seemed Blackbeard would kill the lieutenant. But Maynard's men surrounded Blackbeard. They attacked him from all sides. Swords and knives struck him repeatedly. According to the official account, Blackbeard sustained 25 wounds, 5 from pistol balls and 20 from swords, before he finally fell. Even then, he reportedly tried to cock one of his pistols before death finally took him. Maynard ordered Blackbeard's head cut off and hung from the bowsprit of his ship as proof of the kill. The body was thrown overboard. According to legend, the headless corpse swam around the ship 3 times before sinking. This was how the most famous pirate of the Golden Age died, not in some romantic gesture of defiance, but in brutal, bloody combat, overwhelmed by superior numbers.
News of Blackbeard's death spread rapidly. It sent a clear message to pirates throughout the Caribbean. The authorities were serious about ending piracy. There would be no mercy, no pardons, only death. Most pirates who were captured faced trial. These trials were usually brief and their outcomes predetermined. The evidence of piracy was typically overwhelming. Ships had been captured, cargoes had been stolen, sometimes prisoners had been killed. The accused rarely had any defense. Piracy was a capital crime. The punishment was death by hanging. But the authorities wanted these executions to serve as warnings, so pirate executions were public spectacles. The condemned pirates would be led through the streets of port cities. Large crowds would gather to watch. Some people came to mock the pirates. Some came out of morbid curiosity. Some came to see justice served. At the gallows, the pirates were sometimes allowed to make final speeches. Some pirates used these moments to express defiance. They would curse their captors. They would declare that they regretted nothing. They would warn that other pirates would avenge them. Others expressed remorse. They would warn young men in the crowd not to follow their path. They would pray for forgiveness. They would accept their fate with dignity. One famous pirate, when asked if he had any last words, reportedly said, "I do not fear death. I have seen it too many times to be afraid of it now. But I regret that I have but one life to give for my freedom." After the executions, the bodies were sometimes displayed in iron cages called gibbets. These cages were hung at the entrances to harbors as warnings to incoming ships. The bodies would hang there for months or even years, slowly decomposing until nothing remained but bones. This was meant to terrify potential pirates, to show them that piracy led inevitably to a shameful death and eternal dishonor. But for some, even this did not serve as an effective deterrent. The appeal of freedom and potential wealth was too strong. As long as there were men who felt they had nothing to lose, there would be pirates.
As we drift now toward the end of our journey through the Golden Age of Piracy, it is worth reflecting on the difference between the myth and the reality. The myth of piracy, as presented in movies and books, is romantic and exciting. Pirates are dashing rogues with hearts of gold. They drink rum and sing sea shanties. They speak in colorful accents. They follow a noble code of honor.
They fight against tyranny and oppression. The reality was far different. Pirates were criminals. They stole property. They sometimes killed people. They lived hard, brutal lives filled with violence and disease. But the reality was also more interesting than the myth in some ways. Real pirates created democratic societies at a time when democracy was virtually unknown. They practiced equality at a time when rigid hierarchies dominated every aspect of life. They showed that people from different backgrounds could work together effectively. Real pirates were not particularly honorable, but they were not monsters either. Most preferred to capture ships without violence. Most treated prisoners decently because it was pragmatic to do so. Most followed codes of conduct because they understood that without rules, their crews would descend into chaos. Real pirates were complex human beings. They made choices in difficult circumstances. They adapted to a world that offered them few legitimate opportunities. They created alternatives to the systems that had failed them. We should not romanticize them, but we should not dismiss them either. They were part of history. They shaped the world in small but significant ways. And their stories continue to fascinate us because they speak to something deep in human nature. The desire for freedom, the resentment of unjust authority, the dream of escaping the limitations of our circumstances. These are universal human feelings. Pirates acted on these feelings in ways that most of us never would. But we understand the impulse. The Golden Age of Piracy ended nearly 300 years ago, but its influence persists in unexpected ways. In literature, pirate stories have been popular for centuries. Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, published in 1883, established many of the tropes we associate with pirates. Treasure maps, talking parrots, wooden legs, cries of yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan introduced Captain Hook, the villainous pirate who has become an iconic character in children's literature. In the 20th century, pirate stories evolved. Pirates became anti-heroes rather than pure villains. They were portrayed as rebels against oppressive authority, as men seeking freedom in an unfree world. The Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, beginning in 2003, brought pirate stories to a new generation. Johnny Depp's portrayal of Jack Sparrow drew on the historical pirates we have discussed tonight. The cleverness of John Ward, the theatrical personality of Blackbeard, the democratic practices of real pirate crews. But the movies also perpetuated myths. Real pirates did not have supernatural powers. They did not face undead enemies. They were ordinary men living extraordinary lives. Beyond entertainment, pirates have influenced political thought. The democratic practices of pirate crews have been studied by political scientists and historians. Some anarchist thinkers have pointed to pirate societies as examples of successful, non-hierarchical organizations. The pirate flag, the skull and crossbones, has become a universal symbol of rebellion and nonconformity. It appears on everything from clothing to bumper stickers. It has been adopted by various counterculture movements. Even in technology, the language of piracy persists. Software piracy, digital piracy, the Pirate Bay. The metaphor of piracy is used to describe unauthorized copying and distribution of intellectual property. This is ironic in a way. Real pirates stole physical goods. Modern pirates copy digital information. The parallel is imperfect, but the language reveals something about how we think about property, ownership, and authority in the digital age.
Why do pirate stories continue to captivate us? Why, after 300 years, are we still telling stories about men who sailed under black flags? Part of the answer is the romance of the sea itself. The ocean has always fascinated humanity. It is vast and mysterious. It is beautiful and deadly. It represents both opportunity and danger. For most of human history, the sea was a barrier. It separated peoples and cultures. It made distant lands seem impossibly far away. But for those who learned to sail, the sea became a highway. It connected rather than separated. It made the whole world accessible. Pirates understood this better than most. They were not bound by national borders. They could sail anywhere. The Caribbean one month, the coast of Africa the next. The entire world was their domain. There is something appealing about this freedom, about the idea that you can sail away from your problems, that you can leave behind the society you were born into and create a new identity on the open sea. Modern life does not offer much opportunity for this kind of radical freedom. We are bound by obligations and responsibilities. We have jobs and families and communities. We cannot simply sail away. But we can dream, and pirate stories offer us that dream. They allow us to imagine what it would be like to be free of all constraints, to live by our own rules, to answer to no one. This is fantasy, of course. Real pirates were not free in any absolute sense. They were hunted by authorities. They were bound by their need for supplies and safe harbors. They were constrained by the limitations of their ships and their crews. But compared to the rigidly structured societies they came from, pirates had a degree of freedom that was remarkable, and that freedom continues to appeal to us.
As you lie here now, feeling your body becoming heavier, your mind becoming quieter, imagine yourself on a ship. Not a pirate ship engaged in battle or pursuit, but a ship at anchor in a peaceful cove on some tropical island. The sun is setting. The sky is painted in shades of orange and pink and purple. The water is calm and reflects the colors of the sky like a mirror. You can hear the gentle sound of waves lapping against the hull, a rhythmic, soothing sound, like breathing, like a heartbeat. You can feel the ship rocking gently beneath you, back and forth, so slowly, so peacefully. Around you, your shipmates are settling down for the night. Someone is playing a fiddle softly. Someone else is singing a quiet song about distant shores and lost loves. The air is warm and smells of salt and tropical flowers from the island nearby. A light breeze stirs the sails. You feel safe. You feel at peace. The dangers of the pirate's life seem far away now. The battles, the storms, the constant threat of capture, all of it fades into the background. Right now, in this moment, there is only the gentle rocking of the ship, the soft sound of the waves, the fading light of the sunset. Your body is becoming so heavy now. Your arms and legs feel like they are made of lead. You cannot move them. You do not want to move them. Your mind is becoming quiet. The thoughts that were racing through your head are slowing down, becoming fewer, becoming softer. Soon there will be no thoughts at all, only the feeling of the ship rocking, only the sound of the waves, only the peace of this moment.
You are drifting now, drifting between waking and sleeping, between consciousness and dreams. The stories of pirates and adventures are fading, becoming like dreams themselves, stories from another time, another world. But the lessons remain, the lessons about freedom, about courage, about living life on your own terms. These lessons settle into your mind like sediment drifting to the ocean floor. They become part of you, part of your understanding of the world and your place in it. The ship rocks gently, back and forth, back and forth. The waves whisper against the hull, a soft, constant sound, like a lullaby, like the ocean singing you to sleep. The sky grows darker. The stars begin to appear, one by one. Thousands of them, millions of them, the same stars that guided pirates across unknown seas centuries ago. You can see the constellations, the Southern Cross, Orion, the Pleiades, each one a guide for sailors, each one a light in the darkness. Your breathing is becoming slower, deeper, matching the rhythm of the waves, matching the gentle rocking of the ship. In, out, in, out, slow and steady, like the tide, like the eternal rhythm of the ocean. Your eyelids are so heavy now, too heavy to keep open. They close, and you welcome the darkness behind them. Soft, gentle, comforting. You are sinking now, sinking down into deep, peaceful sleep, sinking down into dreams of distant shores and endless horizons. The Golden Age of Piracy has ended, but its stories live on. They live in books and movies. They live in our imagination, and they live in the dreams of those who long for freedom and adventure. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Dream of ships sailing under starry skies. Dream of tropical islands with white sand beaches. Dream of adventures on the high seas. The world is vast. The world is beautiful. The world is full of stories waiting to be told. But tonight, all of that can wait. Tonight, you simply rest. Rest in the knowledge that you have heard the stories of brave men and women who chose to live life on their own terms, who faced danger with courage, who created their own rules in a world that tried to constrain them.
Their stories are now part of you. They will influence your dreams. They will shape how you see the world when you wake. But for now, there is only sleep. Deep, restful, peaceful. The ship rocks, the waves whisper, the stars shine, and you drift away into dreams, safe, calm, at peace. This is the story of the Golden Age of Piracy. The story of John Ward and Blackbeard and Bonny and Bartholomew Roberts and all the others who sailed under black flags. Their time has passed,
but their legacy remains. Sleep now. Dream of freedom. Dream of adventure. Dream of the endless sea. The ocean whispers your name. The ship carries you gently toward distant shores. And sleep, peaceful and deep, welcomes you home. Good night.